There is a subset of salespeople that know how to sell, but they don't. Why? Why not? I mean, actually, there's a lot of reasons why that may be the case. But the reality is selling is just hard. It is a tough profession, despite what some people might think. But what's missing? What's missing in the salesperson who can sell, but doesn't? This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. Why? Well, because sales training it's got some problems. You look at the evidence and we can figure all that out. But man, we've got a guy today that's really going to help us figure some things out. He's Jeff Bajorek, and a good friend, a good guy, and he's got his own podcast, Rethink the Way You Sell. He's written a couple of books, and we share a lot of passions, including, by the way, Jeff, we kind of got started the same way, didn't we?
Our origin stories are eerily similar, Kelly. So it led me to make the decision, can I trust this guy, or do I really need to hang out with this guy more often? And I'm glad I chose the latter, because you've been such a great, I think, champion for our profession. But you've also been incredibly generous and incredibly good to me with your time, with your expertise, with your wisdom. And I'm happy to chop it up with you. I'm a big fan of yours.
Yeah, well, back at you. Obviously, the content you bring to the table is fantastic. Guys, if you're not following that podcast, make sure you do. Rethink the Way You Sell. Jeff, the topic today is great, especially in terms of what I do and sort of the mission that I have in revamping the way people look at sales training. Because there's a whole cohort of salespeople out there that actually have the skill, but they don't execute. You know, they can sell, but they don't. And that can really create some problems with sales managers. But I think it begins with this premise, is that there's this notion out there that selling is easy. You know, it's long lunches and golf twice a week and, you know, make tons of money and all that kind of thing. But I start with this. Selling is freaking hard.
Well, and you don't make tons of money unless you produce tons of results. And I think that's the part that, you know, Joe six-pack, you know, punching a clock beginning of the day, leaving at the end of the day. Even some of the people that just kind of show up at their office work, maybe they're salaried professionals, they're doing great work. That is work that needs to be done. Quite frankly, they're doing things that I choose not to do. But I think looking on the other side of the fence and saying, oh, well, they must have it good. It's nice. The highs are high, but the lows are incredibly low. And it's like airline status or hotel points and stuff like that. Oh, it must be nice to get bumped up to, you know, first class or whatever. It's like, yeah, do you realize that's what makes it tolerable? Do you realize how much time I spend away from my family? The reason that I do all of this is in another part of the country. Meanwhile, I'm delayed 7.5 hours on a flight home for my daughter's birthday. Like, you want that? Like, it's here. There are positions available right now if you want to step into the ring. But, you know, there's the whole, just tell the whole story. I have closed deals on golf courses. Yes, I have had some of the best food that you can ever find, and I have not had to pay for it. That's great. I pay for those things way more often than I don't, and it comes with a price. So
absolutely it does.
Just tell the whole story. That's
yeah. You know, here's what I like to tell people. You know, you show up and you go to work, you're getting paid, right? But I will tell you something that's absolutely true for me. I have never, not one time in my entire 40-year sales career, ever been paid for coming in second place. Never.
That's such a great way to put it. It is the right amount of smart aleckness.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, do you realize, you know, and I was talking with someone else earlier this month about closing rates. And when the average closing rate across all industries hovers somewhere around 15 to 20%, that means 4 out of 5 times I've got this huge investment, if you're average, and I'm not getting paid. Right? And even those who are really good at what they do and their closing rates are much higher, there are times when they invest a tremendous amount of time and effort and they don't get paid. So first supposition is very, very simple. Selling is hard. And yet there are a lot of things that go into this idea that people are capable and they just don't sell well. I mean, it can come down to self-confidence and reassurance. A lot of it comes down, Jeff, to the sales leader. I mean, this is such a high and low kind of profession, right? So talk a little bit about how sales leaders impact salespeople's ability to do their job well and be successful.
Well, they impact it by being mentally on vacation. They impact it by throwing training at the problem as if skills are the issue. And they say, well, I gave you training, go do it. I enabled you, just go do it. Would you just go do your job? I'm going to be back here looking at the dashboard reports. I'm going to be hiding behind my desk, yelling at you, and pointing my fat finger in your face that you need to get the job done. I'm not going to actually mentor you. I'm not going to bring you along in any sort of apprenticeship, particularly if you're, lower in tenure in this profession. I'm just going to say that I'm giving you clear expectations and I'm going to expect that you deliver them. There are so many ways to do this right, Kelly. I believe there are more ways to sell correctly than to sell incorrectly. That is not an advantage. That makes it more difficult, right? Because there are so many right ways to do it. The problem becomes when you don't commit to a right way to do it, and you get messed up and confused and all turned around, and then it just becomes a mess. Then you start to doubt yourself. Then you start to, decide whether or not you need to accept mediocrity. Like, okay, well, I could be mediocre at this and still lead a pretty good life and make good money and do some cool stuff, but that also doesn't feel like me. I'm a high achiever. That's why I chose this profession. The inner conflict is what stops people from making sales, and leaders don't want to go there. And I want to say something on behalf of leaders. I think it's the most difficult job in the sales organization for a lot of reasons. So I can empathize with the sales leader, but you have to also understand that your job is to lead salespeople, not to tell them when they're not doing well enough. It's to lead them, and leadership means involvement, and there's just not enough involvement from frontline sales managers anymore.
Yes. Listen, if we had a studio audience, they'd all be up on their feet giving you the standing O. Dude, that is absolutely correct. People ask all the time, what is the hardest job in corporate America? Sales leader, sales manager. And they're like, what? What about the CEO and all that? I'm like, listen, when you have the upward pressure from your salespeople and the downward pressure from executives to move the needle, and you're trying to do both. And by the way, they've put all this junk on you that you have to do that has absolutely nothing to do with producing revenue. And then they wonder what in the world's going on, when sales are down or margins are compressed. Absolutely a fact. I want to go back to something you mentioned, though. You said something about, we create clear expectations and then, don't do anything to help. I'm going to say that maybe it's worse than that. So many of the expectations that I see sales leaders put on their people are not specific. They're not clear. They're not results oriented. It sounds like this. Jeff, you're struggling out there right now. You're only at 90% of plan. We need to bring you up. Listen, you need to get focused. Okay, man, that's helpful. I appreciate that. Thanks. No, I'm crystal clear, Jeff. Your problem is you're just not focused.
Yeah.
Right. Or, I noticed that your closing ratio has dropped over the past quarter. You really need to work on your closing. You need to get better at closing. Like, except that the problem is I'm in front of the wrong person at the wrong time, the wrong opportunity with a bad solution, and I'm closing like crazy, but it's not working. I mean, there's so much that goes into this equation. We could really unpack it for quite a while, but your deal is you're really passionate about the concept of belief.
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of salespeople that go out there with the capabilities and they struggle with confidence. They struggle with believing that it can get done. And a lot of people do not understand how big that mindset is in terms of success. Why don't you go with that a little bit?
There's just so much resistance out there, and there are so many opportunities to question what it is that you're doing and how you're doing it. And success is rooted in belief. You will not succeed unless you believe that you can succeed. You may have a success, right? You may get lucky. You may find yourself in the right place at the right time, and maybe that feels like success, but unless it's sustainable, it's really not success. So you cannot succeed with any consistency unless you believe you can. But the cornerstone of belief is about integrity. and not integrity like, okay, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do and then I'm going to make sure I do it. I mean, that's
Right.
the morality side of integrity, but I mean
Right.
alignment. I mean the alignment between what you sell, who you sell it to, how you sell it, and why. And if you don't have those four things in alignment, you will not believe that you're in the right place selling the right things. And without that belief, you can't sustainably succeed. And I call that the sales success cycle, right?
Yes,
Belief
yes.
leads to success. Success with integrity instills belief, which instills success, and it just goes on and on. And that is something that I really didn't codify until the last year or so when I really started thinking more in these terms. But that's absolutely been that's been my experience at multiple stages in my career, and every top performer I've ever worked with or studied has had a similar phenomenon in their career where they go from this place of doubt, resistance, mediocrity, which leads to shame, which is no way to sell. When you start wondering if you're the
Absolutely.
problem, you've got no platform or leverage at all. You have to take that and choose to lean into that adversity, believe that you can overcome that adversity. You start to have success. You realize you can do it in a way that makes you feel fulfilled outside of the golf games and the steaks and the bottles of wine and the reward trips and stuff like that. You feel like you're doing the right things for the right reasons and you get paid for it. That really underpins sustained high level success. And this
Absolutely.
is something nobody's talking about it, Kelly. And I can't believe
they're really
nobody's
not.
talking about it.
Yeah, and it's salespeople that are listening to you, Jeff, right now, sales leaders, they're like, man, I'm all over that. I 100% understand that.
Yeah.
The layperson, they're like, what are you talking about? Well, here, let me make it simple for you. You watch the PGA, watch the golf tournaments every week. There are people out there. Jeff and I play a little golf. Well, Jeff's a golfer, and I just go drive a cart. Yeah. Anyway, there are golfers out there that can play incredible golf, but they're not doing well. They're not finishing even in the top 20 or 30 of the golf tournament. So it's not about capability, people. It's about what's going on between their ears. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why salespeople struggle. Some are just poorly trained. They're just not capable. Some, sadly, are lazy, shouldn't be in the industry or the profession anyway. Some lack some of that passion that gets instilled from success and a good sales leader and all that. Some, the difficulty, the resistance, the friction that they have to put up with, it wears them down and they quit, again, a sales leader. And some obviously lack that belief. I mean, there's just so much to this dynamic. Do we need to do better training? Yes. Do we need to do better leading, coaching, developing, instilling that confidence? Jeff, that's exactly what you're getting at.
And it's incumbent upon the leader to create the space for their reps to succeed. And that doesn't mean throwing training at the problem. What it means more often than not is creating a vulnerable space for their team to be willing to admit what they feel they're lacking, and for them to be willing to admit that they don't have it all figured out. And once you've created that environment, now we can actually tell the truth. Because I don't care what you say, Kelly, the truth is undefeated, right? It always comes back around and we realize what is going on. So the more quickly and efficiently you can enable that space to tell the truth, now we can really talk about where we feel that resistance, where we feel we're being held back. Well, now that we know what the real problem is, we can address it. But just pretending, oh, my reps are lazy. I don't think there are very many lazy salespeople out there. You don't sign up for a high amount of variable compensation without a drive to earn it. But there are a lot of sales reps who appear lazy because they're uninspired or it's not the right fit. They lack that alignment, and that is a leadership issue. That is a leadership issue. We cannot keep pinning this on salespeople alone. The leader plays a role, and if you're abdicating that role, you're failing everybody. You're failing yourself, you're failing your company, you're failing your reps, you're failing your customers, you're failing your customers' customers, because we create results for our customers so they can create results from theirs. That is a failure. The leader has to wear it.
Oh, I love that. Right. So if somebody is actually lazy, it's probably the sales leader. By the way, that always reminds me of a famous Zig Ziglar quote. Lazy salespeople have skinny kids.
Yes.
I always love that. Hey, coming up next on Sales Untraining, we're going to talk more to Jeff, and we're going to talk about some very specific questions that he thinks you should be asking your salespeople. Stay with us. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show. Most salespeople go into some sort of sales call or presentation, and all they're doing is thinking about what they're going to say next because they're still in the conscious part of their brain trying to recall what it is that they should do next, or what part of the solution they should talk about next, or how they should present it. They often miss the most obvious questions and buying cues and other things that are incredibly important. The whole objective is to become so good and so comfortable with what you do and what you sell and your knowledge of the industry and the solution and how it impacts their business, all of those things, so that you can focus on dialogue. Well, to do that, I've got to get completely comfortable with those things. Hence, practice. Welcome back, Sales Untraining. You remember, it's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. There's a reason that sales are not where they're supposed to be, and trust me, it almost never has anything to do with the economy, your marketing, your product selection, or any of those things. Quite often, it has to do with a lot of other components you're not even addressing, like the one we're talking about today, talking about sales leadership with Jeff Bajorek. He has his own podcast, Rethink the Way You Sell. You need to make sure you check it out. But you've got some questions I think are really intriguing, and they're sort of the amplified questions that I like to ask. I think I like your questions better, though. So there's 5 questions that you have that you like to ask sales leaders. Why don't you run those by us?
Yeah, and I'll go through them really quickly, and then I'll kind of dig into each one. But I want to give people an overview here. And this is something that I learned early on in my consulting career when I was working with Jeffrey Gitomer. And if you don't know him, you got to go find him because some of his stuff is just classic. But
all right, so now we're just name dropping. All right.
Just named casually. I dropped that. Let me pick that
casually.
Up here. Just sorry. But no, 5 questions that I ask, and I do this in an exercise with all my clients, like right away, because it's really important to get this stuff all out on the table. And when you have a room of people talking about this stuff, answering these questions, everybody learns a little bit something from everybody else,
Absolutely.
And the morale in the room goes through the roof. I mean, it's palpable. But the 5 questions are pretty simple. Why do you believe in the company you work for? Why do you believe in what you sell? Why do you believe in yourself? Why do you believe your customers are better off for working with you than anybody else? And why do your best customers buy from you? And that last one's a trick question. I'll tell you why in a minute.
Yes.
But we have to start by identifying the alignment between you and your company. I talked about the alignment between what you sell and who you sell it to. Well, when you choose a company to work for, you've kind of chosen those 2 things, the product or the solution and the target market. But the key there is that this is a choice. Remind yourself why you chose to work for this company. And if your reason for choosing was, well, they were the only ones that would have me, you've got a bigger issue to tackle. And it probably doesn't have much to do with your job. And so I'm not here to dig into that right now, but we have to look at the bigger picture. If you're just willing to settle for whatever comes along, you're going to have a hard time as a seller. And you need to address where that comes from before anything else. But remind yourself why you chose that company and why, even though you could work anywhere you wanted, that is the place that you chose. There are good reasons. Be aware of those reasons.
Yes.
That dovetails into why do you believe in the solution that you sell, right? What good does it do for people? What are the impacts of what you see? You make a sale and it impacts your customers and it impacts their customers. What do you love about that? Is there alignment there? Do you feel good about that? Is there any non-monetary fulfillment that goes along with you making a sale? The higher the non-monetary fulfillment, the more successful you're going to be and the more money you're going to make. That's the counterintuitive nature to that. The less it is about money, the more money you're in position to make. The third question is, why do you believe in yourself?
Hey, let me stop you for a second right there.
Go ahead.
Because there's a question that I insert right there that really takes people down a rabbit trail. But the question I ask is, after, do you believe in your company and do you believe in your product? Here, is it worth what we charge?
Ooh.
So here's what's funny. People go, is this a great company? Absolutely. Yes. Great company. Do we sell great products? Oh, it's the best. Are they worth what we're charging? Yeah.
I had that one customer pay list price that one time, right?
Yeah. That one time. Right. So my apologies. Question number 3.
That's beautiful. But question number 3 is, why do you believe in yourself? And this is the toughest one to answer, because you really have to articulate it. It's something that we don't like to think about. It feels a little squishy. It feels a little soft. It feels like, wait, can't I just study some closing techniques or some negotiating, some objection handling techniques? Can I do anything other than remind myself why I think I'm capable? No, here's the homework. You got to do this, because this is the key that unlocks everything else. The 4th question is, why do you believe your customers are better off working with you? And this ties pretty closely, I think, to your pricing scenario. What differentiates us? What's worth paying a premium for us? What are the results that we can create and the ways we can create those results that nobody else can? And if you can't ride for this answer, then you are absolutely in the wrong place. Find another gig. Seriously. Like this is the most important question on the page. And then I go to question 5, which is, why do your best customers buy from you? And that is a trick question. And the reason it's a trick question is because if you have not asked, you do not know.
That's right.
And if I lined up 100 salespeople and said, why do your best customers buy from you? 5 would know because they've asked.
Yes.
15 would guess right because they're pretty sharp. 80 people would be shocked to know the real answers. That is the problem. Because if you don't know why your best customers buy from you, you will never have the language or the understanding of how to find more just like them. And we already talked about selling being hard. There's no reason to make it harder than it is. But if you don't have the key to the lock, like, you are literally just flying blind, and it is nothing more than 5 questions away. And I've got another set of 5 questions away. People can ask me about that, or we can talk another time about that. I know, we don't have all day to talk about sales leadership here right now, but like, it's a simple conversation away. And it will unlock your business growth and development for the next 5 to 10 years if you're willing to, and I'll go back to the first segment, be vulnerable enough to understand what the real issue is, be vulnerable enough to sit with your team and answer these questions, realize that you're all on the same page, in the same place for the same reasons, and that those are really good reasons to go with. And then when you feel that fire in your belly start to grow a little bit, now you can use the training that you've been given all along. But the real roadblock is not that salespeople don't know what to do, it's that they're not doing it. And leaders have not created the space to decode that puzzle so that we can actually solve the real issues.
Absolutely right. There's such good stuff. I mean, the thing that kills me about salespeople, Jeff, is so often when they're talking to customers, they just sound like every other salesperson. Why? Because they haven't answered these 5 questions. They don't have that fire in the belly that you're talking about. Listen, salespeople, if you don't have the desire to play at the highest level, if you're not willing to compete, and if you don't have the discipline to practice and get better and do the things that you need to do, that's on you. Sales leaders, this piece is on you. Sales leaders have to bring more to the table than budgets and reports and CRM jockeys. I mean, there's more to sales leadership than that. Hey, this has been a fantastic conversation. Jeff, tell us a little bit more about you. Where can we find you?
You can go to jeffbajorek.com, or if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast on Spotify or YouTube or wherever it is, you can just search for Rethink the Way You Sell. That's my trademark. So anybody who's using it and isn't me, like, let me know, and I can get my lawyers on them, right? But that's the fastest
staff
way
of
to
lawyers
find me.
Standing by right now. Right. Hey, great stuff, Jeff. So good to have you on board. It's Sales Untraining. We'll see you next time.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.